We're in Cork Educate Together Secondary School. We have a very strong sense of what students are capable of and mature enough to understand. We see our job as preparing them for not only employment and further study, but also understanding the world in which they're going to be hopefully active citizens. We're constantly looking for opportunities for them to gain competence to navigate and change that world when they become adults.
The importance for me of global citizenship is I think that mathematics is the language that describes the world that our students live in. So it absolutely makes sense to me that they learn to be a good citizen through their mathematics. They need to be able to understand anything they're presented with. They need to be able to understand ratio and proportion, size and scale, and as well as to question. And then more deeply, I think with the problem solving, I think that's important that they are our future problem solvers. So if they can understand the world they live in now, they learn problem solving skills, I hope they'll take that learning with them to solve our future problems.
Global justice and having our students understand that they're part of the human race blends really naturally with my subjects. So, for example, in history, I make a real effort to ensure that minority voices are coming through every era that they're learning. And what I found is this has really deepened their understanding that the story of humanity is a global one. We ensure that we're constantly having them, one, recognize that we're actually the global minority in the global north. Every issue that we investigate, we're not doing it justice if we only look at Europe or only look at Ireland.
We are all global citizens. We're all part of the greater world. Theme of solidarity is so vital, so in lessons we've looked at Seamus Heaney and how he contributed to the anti-apartheid movement and how you can bring that into different lessons.
We've been looking at world wealth, world population, and dividing world wealth between populations by continent. So this understanding that if we were dividing the world wealth, that it's not equally distributed. So I think for me, the biggest thing in maths that maths can help with is inequality. So there's the axiom of equality is fundamental to maths, that things are equal, but when you think about global justice, really it's all about inequality. So it helps us understand that things are unequal.
So we try to work in a cross-curricular way in order to show students the complexity of issues and get them to kind of start digging into that complexity.
In terms of the skills, I think it's the most important things is dialogue. So speaking to students, starting from where they're at, questioning why they have those thoughts and those opinions and kind of go, oh yeah, so where did you hear that from? And oh yeah, where do you think that source came from? So using the skills that we have across our subjects of critical thinking, in history, in CSPE, in the subjects that are particular to us as well as in change makers, in TY, in the school and ethical education. So it's constantly sort of unlearning things and sort of then reconstructing our knowledge. So, obviously the 5 guiding principles of WorldWise global schools that we use. So, firstly we unlearn and then we reconstruct and we go really deep. And then once we have those sort of embedded, we can start then looking at human rights and looking at solidarity and making the link between the local and the global.
It also connects very well with the curriculum. There's a CBA, classroom-based assessment for junior cycle, which is statistical investigation. So it allows us to do a lot of the work for that at that time. Well, in maths, I think, it's inherent anyway. For example, in Leaving Cert in the senior cycle, in the examination, 50% of the examination is context and applications. So what better context and applications than, the ones that are in the world already. And that's certainly where the examinations commission are getting their examples. So we should be using them so there's every opportunity to use examples that are realistic and question things.
The new learning intention says the students should learn about an ancient civilization of their choice or a revolution of their choice. And often we give them the ancient civilization that tends to be a Western one, or we give them a revolution that tends to be the French or the American, but not the Haitian. So by actually following the learning outcomes and trusting your students, you can ensure that students do get to choose the ancient civilization or the revolution that they want to study. And through that, the rest of your class will be exposed to a more global perspective on those issues and on those movements, in particular for the revolutions, which are often considered that democracy and revolution and rights are a European thing, when that's not the case. It's a global thing.
I think it's really important to learn about global justice in schools, because I think it really puts that connection between knowing abstractly that, well, the world is unfair and we face inequalities, and it really helps students kind of link that with their world as well, because a lot of time, there's news and stuff, and we kind of find it difficult to kind of take that headline and put it in our personal lives.
And I know it's such a cliche to talk about education changing the world, but it really does.
Now, when I go into a town, I don't just think about, oh, well, I want to get a shirt. I kind of think about, well, who's manufactured this shirt? Who's sewn this shirt? What kind of conditions maybe were they working in? I think it's really about showing how we can make an impact, even in just students' lives and even within our school and just within our daily lives.